In the heart of the Arabian desert, where life itself seems like an unwelcome guest, an impossible dream was born. It wasn't just a building challenging the horizon, but a vertical city deciding to slice through the air with a height of 828 meters, as if asking the sky one question: how far can humans go if they refuse to accept the word no? But before anything could rise, there was the problem that kills dreams before they're even born: the ground. Loose sand, fragile coral, limestone that crumbles under pressure, and no solid rock nearby to give any confidence to a structure that would become the heaviest in the world. Here, a mistake doesn't just mean a dramatic collapse, it means something worse: the tower slowly sinking, as if being swallowed, until the miracle disappears inside the desert. The solution didn't come from brute force alone, but from nature. A design inspired by a desert flower, a three-lobed base that refuses to obey the wind, and a Y-shaped concrete core that isn't for show, but is the weapon that would break storms before they learn how to strike. And in January 2004, the battle began. An army of workers and machines getting ready to invade the sky. The first step was digging, but not to reach rock, rather to create something stronger than rock in this soil: friction. The first secret is that the tower doesn't sit on the ground, it grabs it. The biggest drilling machines came to drive in 192 concrete piles, each one going down 50 meters, deeper than a 15-story building. And because the sand could collapse and bury the holes before they were finished, the engineers used a chemical fluid to keep the walls intact. Then, tons of reinforcing steel were lowered in, and liquid concrete flowed to fill the void, forming roots that would not budge. Even water was a hidden enemy, salty groundwater sneaking in to attack the steel. So the solution was unconventional: permanent electrical protection to prevent rust, as if the foundations were being shocked so they'd stay alive and protected. And after the roots were done, it was time for the footing that would carry the weight of a city: the raft foundation, the largest single concrete pour in construction history. But Dubai's heat was capable of killing the concrete before it could set. So a brilliant paradox happened. Ice entered the desert. Tons of it were added to the mix, and the work was done at night, where the ice melted slowly and gave the concrete a chance to bond chemically without cracking. Thousands of cubic meters of concrete were poured to form a base that could bear a weight beyond imagination. A weight that made any mistake in the foundation an engineering crime. Only then, after a year of war underground, did the tower start to appear in the light. Now, time became a new enemy. Construction had to move fast before chaos could swallow the project. That's where the second weapon came in: hydraulic jumping forms. No disassembly, no reassembly. The forms lifted themselves, and a new floor was born every 3 days, in a non-stop symphony of steel and concrete. Crews working 24 hours a day, and the city growing as if it were a living creature, climbing the sky. But every extra meter made the question harder: how do you get the concrete up there? The solution was super pumps that pushed it with pressure too brutal for normal pipes. And as the tower reached new heights, the cranes started operating in the death zone, where the winds get fiercer and any mistake turns into a disaster. Even so, the pace of construction was terrifying: a new floor every 72 hours. With every rise, the tower's shape started to change. The building shrank gradually, as if sharpening itself against the air. This wasn't a coincidence, but an engineering trick called confusing the wind. The spiral design stops wind vortices from forming in a stable pattern, and those vortices are what destroy skyscrapers. Burj Khalifa doesn't just resist the wind, it breaks it before it can learn how to become dangerous. The tower passed the Eiffel Tower, and it was still only halfway. Then, the battle reached a level cranes couldn't reach. So, a strange solution appeared. The cranes started climbing the tower itself. They raised their own bases, fixed them to higher floors, and kept going, in a risky process, like trying to lift yourself by your own hair. Down below, more than 12,000 workers from dozens of nationalities worked like a single beehive, while inside, air pressure and sound changed with height, as if the building was gradually swallowing you into a different climate. At 500 meters, this was no longer just a skyscraper project. It was entering the world of the super tall. The pressure needed to pump concrete reached record levels, and the engineers needed a special mix: concrete as hard as rock, but still pumpable to the top. And in July 2007, a historic moment came. The tower became the tallest structure ever built by humans. The clouds were under the workers' feet, and the sky wasn't the limit, it was just the workspace. Because even a tiny deviation here would turn into kilometers of error at the top. Satellites and GPS took over to monitor the tower's straightness with millimeter accuracy. And every 30 floors or so, mechanical levels were built, the heart and lungs of the building. Stations for power and water, and systems that run the vertical city that only sees the ground as a distant memory. The building was designed to withstand strong earthquakes thanks to its flexibility, because it can't be completely rigid at this height. It has to be strong and flexible at the same time. Then the outer skin appeared. Tens of thousands of glass panels. Special glass coated with a thin layer that reflects the sun's heat. And labs tested it, even with jet engines, to make sure it could stand up to desert storms. Every panel was installed by hand, men hanging between sky and earth, because every piece had its own identity and place. At 600 meters, physics stepped in. The pumps could no longer push concrete any higher, so a decisive decision was made. Switch from concrete to lightweight structural steel to complete the top. The spire installation began, and they entered a phase where accuracy was measured in tiny fractions, because any misalignment at the top would expose itself to the whole world. Inside, the fastest elevators were installed, capsules designed to handle pressure changes so passengers wouldn't feel sudden pain, while the tower itself uses the cooler air up top to help cool parts of the lower floors, and captures condensation water to send it back down to the ground as a gift. A closed ecosystem inside a skyscraper. As they reached 700 meters, the air got thinner and the winds more vicious, and the workers operated in a climate about 10 degrees cooler than at ground level. That's where the final challenge remained. The telescopic mast. There wasn't a crane in the world that could lift it. So how did it appear? The trick was brilliant and simple in idea, impossible in execution. The mast was assembled inside the body of the tower, hidden from sight, then pushed up piece by piece using powerful hydraulic jacks, as if the tower was growing by itself, lifting its crown from within and announcing its final number, 828 meters, a number that broke the rules of architecture. Then asked another question. How do you bring down the cranes that built the tower? So, the cranes were dismantled in reverse order. A smaller crane taking apart a bigger one, then an even smaller one taking apart that one, until the last piece came down like the end of a long ritual. Even window cleaning needed special machines that hide inside the structure and come out to do the job, because cleaning that many windows by hand would take months. Inside, the concrete turned into luxury, and the facade became a giant light screen through fiber optics. In emergencies, hardened shelters are smartly distributed, and the safety systems are designed to resist fire and smoke to the point where the tower treats itself like a living being that has to stay alive no matter what. Around it, the desert turned into one of the most expensive pieces of land on Earth, as if the tower didn't just change the skyline, it changed the value of the ground itself. Then came the inauguration. Light and fire announced humanity's victory over the impossible. From a hole in the sand to a peak touching the stars, the tower stretches like a giant sundial, and someone standing at the top can see the sunset twice in one day if they move fast enough. Records keep falling, and one landmark redraws the world map. And with all that, a deeper truth remains. This is not just a building. It's an idea fixed in place with concrete and steel. Every bolt was designed to withstand unbelievable forces. Every detail was tested in wind tunnels. Every meter at the top calculated, so it sways very slowly instead of breaking, and an electronic brain monitors thousands of sensors every second, because surviving here means constant monitoring, like a heartbeat that never stops. And so, from nothing, the summit was made, not because the desert is merciful, but because humans decided that the word impossible isn't a law, just an opinion.